Today, the 2014 negotiation between Taylor Swift and Spotify will be dissected. In 2014, Taylor Swift decided to pull her music from Spotify, the world's market share leader in subscription streaming services. In that year, she decided to not make her whole back catalog available on the popular streaming service due to a multitude of reasons, including low artist payouts on the service's royalty revenue share. Another major reason was the service's freemium model, which Swift had an issue with because she believes all valuable art should be paid for. Spotify at the time was negotiating with her camp on how to get her catalog back on the service because, simply put, there is substantial demand for her music and her fans want to be able to listen to her music in as many ways as possible. Taylor Swift had many interests during this negotiation. One that immediately stands out is Swift's desire to make sure artists are properly compensated for their art. As mentioned earlier, she is a firm believer that all art should be paid for, and as one of the world's most popular artists, she feels empowered to use her platform to make a statement. Many analysts also believe that Swift pulled her music from the streaming giant in order to drive more demand for her upcoming music in hopes of giving her more leverage in her negotiations with Spotify. Spotify's primary interest during this negotiation was to be able to successfully convince Taylor and her team to host her music on their service, not only to gain more revenue, but also to prevent competitors to gain an edge in the market. In 2014, iTunes was in talks to start their own streaming service, and Spotify feared that most of Swift's fans would ditch their Spotify subscriptions as a result. Another major interest from Spotify was to attract investors, as at this time, Spotify was a privately held company that was soon to file for an IPO. Thus, having someone of Swift's caliber would only strengthen the company's valuation even more. Swift's position during this whole negotiation was to not host her music catalog on Spotify until royalty payouts were improved. Her label at the time, Big Machine Label Group, went on record and said that they would prefer Spotify to implement a 30-day free trial of the service, which then converts into a paid subscription. Till this day, Spotify does not have a 30-day free trial business model, but they do give users the chance to use Spotify Premium for free for 3 months to increase the paid user conversion rate. Spotify founder Daniel Ek and Spotify's position was to convince Taylor and her team that streaming versus downloading is where the industry was headed in regards to music consumption. Ek went so far as to even invite Swift and her team to the Spotify headquarters in Stockholm to share knowledge and awareness around the company's business model and where they see the ecosystem of streaming moving forward. One concept from class that played a role in this negotiation was game theory. In this situation, both Spotify and Taylor Swift had competing interests and had to convince each other during the whole negotiation why their stance and bargaining position was the best way to generate revenue for all parties involved. Another concept from class that is applicable in this negotiation is the concept of the win-win principle. Taylor and her camp weren't necessarily bashing Spotify for their business model, but rather providing solutions on how it can potentially be improved so all parties involved can thrive on the streaming platform. Lastly, another concept that can be applied is BATNA. If Swift wanted to completely avoid doing business with Spotify altogether, she can simply just distribute her music through iTunes, YouTube, and all the other music platforms that are at her disposal. What went well during this negotiation was that although Taylor Swift and her label, Big Machine Label Group, were publicly against Spotify's business model, Spotify and Daniel Ek responded professionally and did not make any public statements bashing Swift for not hosting her music on the platform. Instead, Ek used his thinker negotiation style and invited Taylor and her team to the Spotify headquarters in Stockholm to educate her team on their business model in hopes to reestablish a relationship. It's important to always keep one's emotions in check during an intense negotiation, especially one that can be valued in billions of dollars worth of revenue. What went wrong was that Taylor Swift's team underestimated how important streaming was going to be moving forward, as they still placed value in downloaded music. Big Machine wanted to do business with iTunes primarily during Taylor's 1989 album rollout, because artists were being compensated more through royalties derived from downloads versus streaming. However, what Big Machine failed to realize initially was that the number of paid subscribers across all streaming platforms was increasing exponentially by the year, signaling a drastic change in music consumption behavior. An agreement was finally reached between Spotify and Taylor Swift. After speaking with Ek directly, Swift returned to Spotify to thank her fans upon her album 1989 selling over 10 million copies. According to Eck, he noticed that Taylor finally understood how streaming was moving towards the future, and ultimately, she saw that her loyal fans were also asking for her music to be on the popular streaming service. Eck also most likely told Taylor and her camp about Spotify's plan to file for an IPO in the future, which would benefit her tremendously since major labels like Universal Music Group are shareholders in Spotify. This agreement will foster long-term growth, and it was only a matter of time before the music industry's most iconic figures did a deal with the market share leader in streaming.